Um, we're excited to have two award-winning ag communicators and rock stars of LPC with us today to talk a little bit about their role as an ag communicator and also kind of the myriad of things that they do, how they balance it, how things also have changed. I would call them somewhat, would you guys say mid-career?
Yeah.
We didn't start yesterday. Yes. I hate to say mid-career, but we might be approaching the mid-career as I'm right there with you. And so, the industry has changed a lot since we graduated from college, and it's kind of fun and exciting to see how it's evolved, but it also adds a lot to the daily scope of what we do, and I know you guys balance a ton in your jobs. So we've got a nice group of people on the chat so far, and we're taping this for those who couldn't join us today. So with that, Scarlett, do you want to help kick us off?
Sure. Thank you, Jennifer. I hope everybody can see me and hear me okay. My lighting in my office is a little wonky, so I sort of look like I'm in the witness protection program, but I'm really not. Hopefully you can see me okay. One thing I want to start out with saying here, and I think Carrie would agree, well, a couple of things. Number one, we are by no means the authority on this topic. We're just trying to say kind of what we do in our jobs and maybe provide some helpful tips to you guys. But the other thing I want to say is we want helpful tips as well. So as we go through our presentation, please share things that you use, to help prioritize or to help better organize your daily job. I really would love to see kind of what you guys are doing, any apps that you use, any computer programs you use. We're going to talk about some that we use, but I would love to see what everybody else is doing. So please just throw those out in the comments, when you feel like maybe it's appropriate, because we would love for you guys to share as well. But I will move on to my portion. Like Jennifer said, I'm Scarlett Hagins. I work for the Kansas Livestock Association, and a big part of my role is writing and designing for the Kansas Stockman magazine. That's obviously not all I do. I kind of, on the slide here, you'll see a short list, I guess. It's not an exhaustive list, but a short list of what we do here in our communications department. We are an association, obviously, so a member-owned association. So a lot of what we do is producer communications, but we also do some consumer communications. Just kind of depends on the issue and sometimes the platform as to what audience we're targeting that day. But you can kind of see a list of pretty much anything that you can think of in the communications world. We use it. We do a monthly magazine. We do a weekly newsletter that's published every Friday. We, of course, have a web page. We also do an e-news blast that gets sent out 3 to 5 times a week. We have social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I think that platform needs to grow. I have got to figure out where we need to grow, what our next platform needs to be, and then figure out extra time to dedicate to that. But I think, there's some areas we can certainly grow there. We also do 3 radio programs a week. 1 we record in-house, 2 we record at a local radio station here in Topeka, Kansas. I should have said that's where I'm broadcasting from this morning, is Topeka, Kansas. But we also do TV segments. We do 2 to 3 segments every few weeks, which is kind of unique. It airs on a program called Kansas Ag Report. And it's just kind of about a minute and a half news segment for that program. Of course, photography, like many of you, I'm responsible, or Todd Domer, which most of you know, is responsible for making sure that we get all of our events covered through photography, news releases, of course. Maybe a unique aspect to my job is media calls. As ag communicators, we feel like we're going to be the one doing the interviewing. But here at KLA, we also take media calls, and we are being the ones that are interviewed, and we are, spokespersons for KLA and for our members. So that's kind of a unique aspect, maybe. I mean, I think some of you do that as well, but to kind of play both sides, if you will, of ag communications. We recently launched a KLA app, which is new, and it's been kind of fun putting that together, and it's another thing that I'm responsible for, making sure that it's updated and maintained. Another thing is crisis communications. Todd and I do that anytime any kind of crisis comes up. For example, the wildfires that ripped through Kansas late last year, or about this time last year in March, and so we were pretty well in crisis mode for about 2 weeks on that specifically, and of course that took precedent over everything. And then another thing that I do is some blog posts, and it's actually for a group called Kansas Farm Food Connection, and that's a group of all commodity groups. So it's a partnership that we have formed with all commodity groups here in Kansas, livestock, grain, and we have our own website called Kansas Farm Food Connection, and it's very consumer driven. That's why we established it, to be able to reach out to consumers that have concerns about agriculture and how their food is grown. And so as a partner in that, we have to provide information and content for that website. So either monthly or every other month, I provide a blog post, and it's completely consumer focused. So for somebody like me who pretty well is producer focused most of the time, it's been an interesting shift for me to be sure that what I write for those blog posts are very consumer friendly and very consumer focused. So that's been a little bit of fun, you know, for me to do a little bit something different. And I know this is spring break, but if there are any students on here or students that are watching this, I hope this list is exciting to you and not scary, because it is a lot of fun to be able to do various aspects of this job and to be able to use all these platforms. It is a lot and it gets overwhelming, but it's exciting, and it's part of one of the things that I love about my job is that I get to do all these different things. So like I said, I hope it's exciting to students and not fearful. But anyway, Jennifer, if you'll go to the next slide, I'll move on here. Determining what comes first, you know, one of the things Jennifer wanted us to talk about is how we prioritize things, because you saw that list, you know, you've got to find a way to prioritize it to make sure that everything gets done. And I had to throw this meme in here. I hope all of you can read it, but all of us on this call have been in that approaching deadline panic. In fact, our April mag goes to print in the morning, so we're, you know, frantically trying to get that done today. But we've all been there, and here at KLA, and I know for many of you, deadlines are really kind of what drives our priority list. We have daily deadlines. Our news story on our website is updated by, we hope, by 9 o'clock every morning. We put a new news story up every morning. We have weekly deadlines. Of course, again, the 3 radio programs, our newsletter, and then monthly deadlines, the biggest being obviously our magazine. So that naturally sets a priority list for us. But then in amongst that, you have, you know, maybe you have breaking news. For us, breaking news on a regulatory issue that we feel like our members need to know about immediately. If that's the case, we'll stop what we're doing. We'll post something on Facebook. We will send out an e-blast to our members, getting that information out there. In our office, media calls take precedent. Anytime, Todd and I are the ones that the media calls filter through, so anytime we get one, that stops and takes precedent. Obviously, crisis, when I was talking about last year and the wildfires, Todd and I figured we took about 100 media calls over a 2-week time period. So that's pretty much all we were doing. And that was our focus. Every piece of communication that we use, that's what we talked about, whether it was TV, radio, newsletter, media calls, obviously. Another one, BSE. If any of you guys were in the business in 2003, you'll remember the cow that stole Christmas. Again, that was we were in a little bit of crisis mode there, and that was all we talked about, for a very long time, making sure that consumers were comfortable with their beef product. But that's kind of how we determine that. Obviously, there's a million other ways to do that. And one thing I would ask for those of you that are on the call, please tell me, if you guys use a computer program that helps you prioritize that, or an app, or anything like that. Again, shout that out, because I would love to know what that is. Jennifer, if you want to go to the next slide. So it is a balancing act, and I think, as college students, especially when I was in college a very long time ago, as an ag communications major, and I know that, that the pathway to that degree has changed significantly since I was there, but you kind of went in thinking you're going to be a writer, or you want to be a designer, or you want to be PR. But the truth is, these days, you're going to be a little bit of it all. And again, I hope that proves exciting, not fearful, but you are going to do a little bit of it all. So it is a balancing act on trying to get everything done that we need to get done in a day or a week or a month. Some of the tips that I have for that, and kind of what we do here, is first off, we use information on more than one platform. So say our weekly newsletter that's printed every Friday, for the following week, we will use some of that information as our web story. We will use it in our e-news blast. I will use portions of it as it fits on Facebook. We will use those for our radio programs. We may use those if we're recording TV that week. We may use them for TV segments. So don't feel like you have to recreate the wheel. I don't remember what the statistic is, but people need to hear things more than once. So don't feel like, well, I shouldn't really use that again because it appeared in the newsletter. Well, here's the thing. Our newsletter goes out to 5,500 people. But do I believe that 5,500 people read that front to back? Probably not. So they may not have seen it in the newsletter, but they may see it on our website, or they may see it on our Facebook page. So be cognizant of that and use it in multiple platforms. Also, coordinating social media platforms. I have the KLA Facebook page connected to the KLA Twitter account. So when I post something on Facebook, it automatically fires out on Twitter, which essentially I'm killing two birds with one stone. Now, there's sometimes that I will just do Twitter things. I don't always just rely on Facebook to fulfill my Twitter feed, but it really helps to connect those. And I think you can do it the opposite way. You can connect Twitter to Facebook if you're more of a Twitter user. I think you can do that as well. But look at those kinds of things that can be time saving, but you're also accomplishing what you need to accomplish. The other thing that we do is utilize our staff. For newsletters specifically, we have a lot of staff on hand that are way more knowledgeable about specific topics than maybe Todd and I are. Maybe it's a regulatory issue or a legislative issue. Then we will ask our lobbyist or our legislative staff to put together an article on that topic to put in our newsletter. Not only does that save Todd and I some time, but it also gets straight to the source. So think about people on your staff. You may not think about your legal staff or if you have that staff or other staff members being good writers or being willing to write. But if you need a little help there, I encourage you to see if they would be willing to do it. We have some people on staff that writing is nowhere near part of their job, but they enjoy doing it. And so they will do some writing for us for the magazine or for the newsletter, and they do a good job at it. So think about the resources you already have at hand and think outside the box. Again, think about those staff members that don't write as a rule, but maybe they would enjoy helping you fulfill some of those needs. Media monitoring, one thing that we use it's called LexisNexis. Again, if any of you guys use media monitoring systems, please shout those out because I would like to know what they are. But for us, LexisNexis monitors all newspapers throughout the state, and TV stations throughout the state, all kinds of communications platforms, so that we know, number one, if what KLA material is getting picked up. So that helps us know kind of, what kind of pickup we're getting. But number two, it helps us monitor issues in the media. So with LexisNexis, we provide specific words that we want it to search for, like beef, cattle, environment, rancher, farmer, different things, different words like that it will pull up, so we can see, number one, if there is positive stories being told out there about our industry, we want to share those. If there is misinformation out there being shared about our industry, we want to be able to keep track of that and counteract that if we can, and get some facts out there, so that people know kind of the real story about what we do. Again, I included that meme because some days are not exactly. When Carrie and I were visiting before this, I told her in Jennifer's description, one of the things was balancing things, and I said some days that's a little bit laughable because you feel like you're scrambling a little bit to get things done, and oftentimes it's not pretty. The process is not pretty, and some days you get it all done and some days you don't, and that's okay too. It's a busy job, but one that I really enjoy, and I hope that some of these tips spurred at least a couple of ideas for you. And again, I ask you to add your ideas to the comment feed here. But I'm going to stop there, and so that we have time for questions at the end, and I'll give it back to you, Jennifer.
Great, thank you. Well, I'll turn it over to you, Carrie. This is Carrie Brown. Tell us a little bit about what you do, Carrie, in your job.
Sure. Mine's much like Scarlett's. I've got, I'm kind of all over the place any given day, and it's very different now, like you said, than it was when I started. I've been here about 16 years, and when I started, really my only job was getting our monthly publication out, and so that's what my focus was, and the job responsibilities that went along with that were, the editing, the writing, photography, and then the sales for our publication as well, and that was really my main. I do occasional press releases and that kind of thing, but that was the majority of what I've done. And boy, has that changed looking back over the last 16 years. We've added quite a few things, and I've got a list there, kind of like Scarlett, of things we work on, but there's much more than that could happen on any given day. So with, back then too, we had a website, and we kind of worked on that a little bit, and now we've got 13 different websites that we manage. We do all of our own website work here in-house, except for one site. We've got 15 different social media accounts between the groups. Within our office, we've got the Cattlemen's Association, which is our membership division, and then we've got the Beef Network, which is funded through a grant that focuses on producer education. We've got our Beef Council, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with what we do there. We also have a company that we just started a couple of years ago. It's called Beef Solutions. So we I was talking to Scarlett before this, we launched a ground beef product that's being sold in Kroger stores. So we're doing all the marketing for that. And then we have our foundation that does scholarships. So we manage a lot of different roles, and there's things within each of those that we are responsible for. When I first started, our staff here we only had 6 people in our office, and we've doubled that in 16 years with in-office full-time people. But we've also, our number of things that we've done has expanded way beyond that. But of those 12, 5 of those are on our communications team. So we spend a lot of time here on marketing and communications for all of those different groups that I talked about. We also added in a few years ago, it's been 5 years ago now, where we do national advertising sales for 14 other state cattlemen's association and then one breed publication. So there's a lot of work that goes into and those are very different. I think a lot of times that the sales role is a lot more phone calls. We spend a lot of time out doing trade shows and events. But those things also help us when we're doing our publication and just things here of what's going on in the industry. I manage the other 4 in our office, as well as our sales team for the Livestock Advertising Network. I think for the ground beef project, that's been a kind of a completely new thing that we've added, and we're all still figuring out. We've never really marketed a product before, so we're all figuring out the different dynamics of that. Of course, we do graphic design work, the event planning and implementation. We have conventions and meetings and those kind of things that we have to organize. I put some stuff on there you might find funny, but the envelope stuffing and label making, those are things that I excel at. And I think no matter what, in most of our communications roles, you like to think of all these, great things that you do, but there's a lot of time spent just, we have a very small staff, so anytime mailings have to go out or things like that, we have to do that ourselves. So I'm pretty good at those things as well. But we also started last year, we hired, 2 years ago now, we hired a guy who's really good with video. And so we just started in January, I guess it was technically in December, where we're doing a monthly video news segment. It's an 8 to 9 minute segment that we're pushing out through social media and through email for our counties to use at their meetings, just to inform people of what we're doing within our office. And that's went over really well. We have our monthly newsletters, those kind of things as well. So a lot of our stuff has been trial and error. We had an app for a little bit, and we used that for several years, and we found that we just couldn't get our producers to use it the way we wanted. So we ended up nixing that this past year and moving over to more text services, which they picked up on a lot better. So we're always, I think, over that time, we've kind of went back and forth. We've tried lots of things that didn't work, and I think in our industry, that's one important thing that we're always having to go back and look at, what we're doing, and is that working? And if not, I think not everyone can do that, but within our association, we got a lot of leeway to try some things and see how they work, and we make those kind of decisions. As far as just prioritizing all this, we have monthly communication meetings with our team here in the office, and that's where I kind of do an overview of our whole month and what we're working on, and we'll map out some things that have to be done during that month. But most everything that I do is weekly, is looking at what needs to get done this week, and I've got a calendar, and I'll talk about some other programs that I use to help organize. Call first thing in the morning, and the whole rest of your day has been shot, and you end up doing those things. So it's always changing, that's for sure, in lots of different ways. Your job changes over time, and then just your day-to-day things change. So I just kind of wanted to go through a few of the programs that are apps that we use to kind of help coordinate some of this. So for one thing, I will go ahead and preface all of this by saying that none of these were my idea. We've hired lots of people in-house, and a lot of younger people who are more up to date with these things, and a lot of them we try, and if they work, we keep them, and if they don't, we move on to the next one. But this is one that we just started using back in December, and has worked really well for our team. Hopefully some of you guys are using it as well, but it's called Slack, and we use that for our internal communications within the office. We are always, we're kind of all over the office, and email works fine, but it's hard to sometimes say, did I text that to them, or did I email it to them, or how did I send it to them on Facebook? How did I get that to them? So we all use this this tool, and we've got channels you can set up for different topics. So we've got, within our office, we've got some beef counsel, we've got promo items, so that when we're talking or wanting something in particular, we can go into that channel, and that's where that communication happens. And then if we ever need to go back and find that, it's searchable, so you can go back and find things. You can use the channels for the topics. You can direct message people. You can share files through that, which we do quite a bit with our publication when we're working on that. And then it also connects with a lot of other apps. So it kind of brings everyone together in one space where we can talk about what we're working on, where we can organize things. And then, like I said, it's accessible, or searchable, which is really nice when you're going back to find things. You can go on to the next one. Another one that we use, and I don't know how many people on here do sales, but this one's good for us in lots of different ways. I mentioned that we do our sales for Cow Country News, and then we also do the sales for a bunch of other publications. So we use what it's called Magazine Manager, and it organizes several things for us. Before, we used to have a terrible system of kind of getting all this. There was an Excel spreadsheet for one thing, and then QuickBooks is what we use for billing. And this system, you can get it all into one. It's web-based. You can access it anywhere you're at. We have lots of logins for all the different sales staff. And so all of that is in one program, and it actually keeps all of your contact information for all of your advertisers. We can put our sales, our contracts in there. It does proposals. And then once you create the contracts, you can push another button and it'll create the bill. It does a lot of reporting. So it saves me a lot of time instead of having to have all these different programs. It's all in one. It keeps things organized. It's very easy to go in there and change contacts. When that happens, you can add notes. So when you're talking to someone on the phone, you can go in there and write, whatever you were talking about, or it actually follows up where you can schedule sales meetings or sales calls. So that one is one that has been very beneficial. And that's one thing with all of these apps. It really helps me save time, that I'm not having to use multiple programs. It's all in one. And we can use it across the staff, so it makes it easier. I mean, go on to the next one. So for organization, that's one thing I always struggle with, is I've got people, half the time, most of my days are spent just talking to people coming in my office. Sometimes you feel like you can't get anything done. But organizing a lot of this stuff, usually every night I will kind of plan what I need to work on for the next day, and I use Trello for that. I know there's lots of different programs out there where you can organize that kind of thing, but I can go in and put everything that I need to be working on the next day. When, like today, I've got a list of things that need to be done, and I can go in and, if something else more important comes up, I can kind of move that all around within that. It has boards where you can add comments, attachments, due dates, and then you can easily move those. If something else of a higher priority comes in, you can move that to the top of the list. And I kind of use that multiple times throughout the day just to make sure I'm getting everything done that needs to be done. It also works with Slack, which works really well for us since we're using that. But like I said earlier, some days there are days you come in and with a plan to get all these things done, and a phone call or someone comes in the office and you end up not getting any of those things done. So I think we all struggle with what to do in those situations. We just work 24 hours a day. I also use it for my personal. I've got 3 children, so keeping up with them and their schedules, I can keep it all in one place instead of having to have multiple platforms to use. You can go on to the next one. Like Scarlett, we use a lot of monitoring services for different things, and that kind of makes our job easier, so we're not having to go out there and search for all these things. And we use it in multiple different ways. We use Meltwater. I've got social media on there too, but it also monitors the radio spots, TV, web stories, that kind of thing. So we use that. We put in keywords for things that we're looking for, and it sends us an update every morning as to what all happened the day before that they've found. And so we use that a lot just to make sure that the messaging that we're coming out with, or to see if there's potential problems that we need to address. And I also use it a lot for story leads. It's interesting sometimes the types of people that you may not have contact with in a normal day, but where it follows a lot of the social comments. Some days, if somebody's doing something in particular, I've used it in that way as well, which is good. But it kind of just in general allows us to see things happening, where we need to ramp up our messaging or where we need to work harder. And we've been using that for a few years, and it works pretty well. You can go to the next one. Another monitoring service that we use more for our websites. is Lucky Orange, and I know there's a ton out there for this as well, but this one has been really good for us. It kind of gives you an overview. It sends us every morning updates on the day before, that it's more of a summary, but when you log in, you can actually see real time how many people are on your site. You can actually follow along with them live with what they're looking at on your site, which we do, especially with this new ground beef product that we've got coming out. We've been monitoring that one really close and looking at what people are visiting on our site. And we can, I think it's kind of creepy that you can actually, I never knew before we got that you could actually follow people live as they're looking at your site and what they're doing. But we do that, and it also allows us to chat online with them live. So a lot of times, we don't use that a whole lot, but we have, especially with this new product, spent some time just seeing if we could help anybody with things that they were looking for while they were on the site. It also does all your basic web stats, your sources, your views by the area. It also has heat maps, and we've used that a lot just to make sure, see where people are clicking, what they're looking at the most, how they're moving around our site, just to make sure those things are laid out the way that they need to. You can look at it from a desktop version or from a phone version as well. So that's helped us just really with our websites in general to make sure that they're user friendly. And then you can go on to the next one. One thing that I think is important for all of us is just to never stop learning, to keep looking. I mean, having a lot of younger staff in here has brought a lot of new programs and apps that I would have probably never known about. So that's helped. But the Ag Media Summit is something that I always learn a lot from going there. I mean, they've got sessions on all those different things, your design, photography, writing, social media, a little bit of everything every year. And I've been going to that for 15 years, and I take away a lot of new ideas and ways to plan from that. The International Federation of Ag Journalists, that's more of just kind of keeping up with what's going on, not only in our country, but in the world. It helps me when I'm looking at ideas for articles and editorial. Among all these things, much like Scarlett said earlier, we reuse a lot of information amongst all of our platforms. So we might go out and do a story for our paper, but then we also use that, a shortened version, for social media or for our website. So another conference that I've been attending the last few years that I've gotten a lot out of is Niche Media. They do digital and print conferences. They actually break it down even smaller by events. And I've learned a lot and met a lot. It's all publications that are similar to ours in that they're a niche publication. All have a lot of the same issues, problems that we deal with. It might be, this last one I went to, you've got a lot of bridal magazines and all, but the core of the problems and the issues, I've learned a lot from them. And when I started, it was more print and not the digital. So I've learned a lot from those just digitally as well. And then Daily Carnage is something that I highly recommend to everybody that I know. It's a daily email that we get, and it focuses, and again, that was from a younger staff person here. She got it, and I've signed up for it, and I really enjoy reading it every day for marketing type things in general. They've got some really great content on there, so it's something that it's one of those that I actually enjoy reading. Obviously, you've got to sign up for all the e-newsletters and e-blasts out there. I spend a lot of time every day just looking at what's going on all around us, and that's where I get a lot of my story ideas and content ideas for all of our different things. But that one I enjoy reading more than others. So that's it. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Carrie and Scarlett. I really appreciate it. We've got some great questions. Sheila stole one of mine, so I'm excited about that. But let's start with Casey Brown. She asked, Carrie, you mentioned Trello works with Slack. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so a lot of times in Trello, when you're assigning like jobs and because within our office, you can, and within Trello, a lot of our work, we split up. So we all kind of have certain things that we work on, but we also all have to do the same thing. So we've got someone who focuses on social media, we've got one who focuses on video, one on graphic design, and one just on well, she does a little bit of everything. But there are lots of jobs that we do that we're all participating in. Say it's our monthly news segment. And so, we'll start throwing out ideas. And so as the job is actually coming up in Trello, you can assign lists to people, and then the apps, or not the apps, but the channels, you can kind of match up so that it's all coming into one place instead of having to look at Trello and at Slack. You can see both of them at the same time. And I think mostly for us, it's the actual jobs that need to be done, and assigning the work, and then just the due dates of when things are due is kind of how they work together nicely.
Okay. Scarlett, do you feel like LexisNexis gives you a good representation of the print news that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think it does. It even tracks, the smallest of county newspapers here in Kansas. And so, we're able, like I was looking at our report this morning, we get you can tell it how many times a day you want to get a report. I currently get one in the morning and then late afternoon, say 4:30, something like that. But I was looking at it this morning. We can see what the Parsons News, is covering, and that's a very small town here in Kansas. So I think, and then also all the way up to the Kansas City Star, Wichita Eagle. So we get a pretty wide range of coverage on it, and it tells us everything. Anytime, of course, it finds Kansas Livestock Association or KLA, it brings that up, but it also brings up anything that has agriculture in it, or cattle, or beef, or whatever. And so I think we get a good representation on what's happening in the print media out there, especially when it's a little bit hard to track what's going on in the smaller venues.
Sheila also asked Carrie a question. Do you use Meltwater to monitor any print or just online news and social?
Yeah, since we've started using Meltwater, which we've been using them probably 4 or 5 years now. Before that, we used another company that monitored, and at that time, even when I first started, we used a company that only monitored print. And we did that for a long time, but I think because most of our newspapers have went online, typically you end up seeing a lot of what we were finding over time was that a lot of the stories, we were kind of using both for a bit. We were using this print one, and then we were using the Meltwater for the social and the web stuff. And what we were finding is a lot of them were the same. And so, and most things in our office that we do, we're pushing out digitally and through social media. And we still send out a lot of press releases and that kind of thing, but we don't monitor our print anymore. Just the amount we were paying for that, we decided within the office that it wasn't worth it, because a lot of that, like I said, was duplication. So at this time, we are just using Meltwater for social and web information.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
While we're waiting here, I will just say that I think or I would encourage you guys to take advantage of your network of people within LPC. I have gone to Carey and said, hey, how do you guys do this? Or, other peers within LPC that kind of are doing some of the similar thing. When we got ready to do an app, I asked a couple of people, well, how do you do it? And what do you, who do you use to do the app? And so this is a great organization to take advantage of. I think I'm going to speak for everybody here, and I think any LPC member is happy to share what they're doing. So if you feel like, if you see something that, the Angus Journal's doing well, or Hereford, or Kentucky Cattlemen's, whatever, call those folks and say, hey, how did you do that? Or why did you guys start doing it? Or what program do you use for that? That's proved hugely beneficial to me when we've looked at doing new things. So I would encourage you to use this group as you can.
Yeah, it's amazing to me sometimes that, like I said, a lot of our staff has brought a lot of these things to me but some of these programs can really help you organize and prioritize what you're doing. So, and there's so many of them out there. It's just a matter of finding one that fits your needs and what you want. So I spend a lot of time looking at And I still, even with different apps that we use now, just looking at even new ones, do they do something or offer something that would be more beneficial? But I think definitely spending some time to look at some of those, and they help take some of that stuff off of your plate so that you're not spending so much time, you know, on the little things that'll actually compile that data together for you. So.
Alrighty. Well, you guys have done a fabulous job, and we know you are busy and have lots of deadlines today. Thank you for making this a priority. I just shared the information for our next LPC Coffee and Collaboration. It's going to take place on April 25th at 10 a.m., and we're going to talk about social media ROI. So I hope you guys can join us. And again, this is recorded, so if you have colleagues who weren't able to attend, we'll have this available soon on our LPC social media channels. Thanks again, and have a great day. Have a fabulous trip, Scarlett.
Well, thank you.
Where are you headed to?
Fort Lauderdale.
Oh.
Yeah, I've never been, but I hear it's a great time, so that's where I'm headed.
Well, have fun. Enjoy
Yeah,
the day for us.
You deserve
Yes,
a
I
little
will.
break.
I will send good, warm vibes back your way.
Thank you.
Thanks again. I really appreciate it, guys.
No problem.
I hope you have
Yeah,
a
thanks for
fabulous
coordinating,
day.
Jennifer.
Bye.
Bye.